what's your assessment of the current state of the Cavs?
Well, one of the things that we really benefited from was we were in a historically bad Eastern Conference. And all through those years, we really knew the target is the Western Conference team. There was nobody in the East who was really going to be in the way.
Yeah, right. The East was the LeBron Invitational for all of those years.
That now.
David Griffin just shook the whole LeBron legacy conversation with one interview. The former Cleveland GM, the same guy who helped bring a championship to the Cavaliers in 2016, openly admitted the Eastern Conference during those years was historically weak. Not just slightly weak, historically bad. And according to him, they did not even treat the regular season like a real battle because they already knew what time it was. 8 straight finals used to sound untouchable, legendary, untouchable dominance. But then you look closer and realize LeBron faced only one All-NBA first-team player from the East during that entire 8-year stretch. One. That changes how people see those runs. And now the truth is not coming from critics or random fans online. It is coming from someone who was inside the building every single day.
LeBron James is a fraud. LeBron James, once again, proves that he's a pat-standing clown and should never again, ever be mentioned in the same breath as the greats who have ever played this great game that we call National Basketball Association basketball.
David Griffin was the general manager of the Cleveland Cavaliers throughout the whole stay, the second stint of LeBron James in Cleveland, when he came back from Miami up until the time that he left to the Lakers. Now, he's being asked about the current Cleveland Cavaliers team and, to acknowledge them and how great they are and all that other stuff. But during the answer to that question, he started talking about those years of the second stay of LeBron James and how lucky they were because the Eastern Conference was probably the easiest Eastern Conference in the history of the NBA.
So what do you think? Are 8 straight finals still impressive, knowing the conference was that weak? Or does this confirm that the path was smoother than people want to admit? Drop your take below, because this one is not simple. Let's break down exactly what Griffin said, because context matters. This is not a rival executive taking shots. This is not a commentator trying to stir drama. This is the general manager who worked directly with LeBron James and helped construct the roster that delivered Cleveland its long-awaited title. When he talks about those finals runs, he is speaking from firsthand experience. Griffin said, "One of the things we really benefited from was we were in a historically bad Eastern Conference all through those years." That is not subtle. That is not coded language. That is a straight-up admission that the competition in the East was not on the same level. He went even further. He explained that they always knew the real target was whoever came out of the Western Conference. In his words, there was nobody in the East who was really going to beat us. Think about that. Before the season even tipped off, the Cavaliers believed the East was already handled. The real challenge was waiting on the other side. He even called it, "The East was the LeBron Invitational for all of those years." That phrase did not come from social media. It did not come from a debate show. That was LeBron's own general manager describing the playoff landscape at the time. And once you hear it framed like that, it forces people to re-examine what those 8 straight finals really mean.
I think what ended up happening ultimately along the way was it changed our perspective to such a degree that you saw us, even the first year we were together, I think we were 19-20 in our first 39 games. And then we run off this historic run in the second half of the season. But guys weren't taking the season seriously.
Playoffs, regardless of their record. The regular season was just practice for the finals.
A violation. So they'll do it again.
In those plays, and that was on LeBron James, those plays often go unnoticed. He makes this shot, people will forget about it. These are the type of plays in this tight of series that can make the difference between winning.
A formality. That is how some people are starting to describe it now. An invitational. Like LeBron was getting a yearly RSVP to the finals because the competition in the East was so weak that just showing up felt like enough. That is not a random fan talking. That is the narrative coming straight from the inside. And then it gets even more uncomfortable. Griffin compared those years to the current Cavaliers team led by Donovan Mitchell. He said, what they're doing is going to be more impressive when they achieve what they're capable of. The Eastern Conference is significantly more competitive than what we had. Read that carefully. The same executive who worked side by side with LeBron is saying that if this new Cavs squad reaches the finals, it would be more impressive than 8 straight trips back then. Why? Because now the East actually has depth. Now there are real threats. Now getting through the bracket actually means something. Griffin also admitted that players on those LeBron teams did not always take the regular season seriously. At one point, he mentioned they started 19-20 through 39 games because guys were not locked in. And why would they be? They already believed nobody in the East could beat them when it mattered. The regular season was treated like warm-ups. The real focus was always whoever survived the Western Conference. Now let's get into the numbers because this is where it hits harder. During those 8 straight finals runs, LeBron faced only one All-NBA first-team player from the Eastern Conference. 1 in 8 years. That is not opinion. That is the statistical reality of that era. Look at some of the All-Star rosters from those seasons. The Atlanta Hawks once had 4 All-Stars. Kyle Korver, a 34-year-old spot-up shooter who was not creating his own offense, was considered one of the elite names in the conference. That tells you something about the overall talent pool. Pau Gasol was starting in the East All-Star game while playing for the Chicago Bulls. Solid player, respected career, but that was the level headlining the conference at the time. A lot of those names feel distant now because that era did not have the same star power depth. Meanwhile, the Western Conference was stacked. All-Star games regularly turned into lopsided showcases because the talent gap was obvious. The imbalance became so noticeable that the league eventually scrapped the East versus West format and switched to a draft system, leading to Team LeBron versus Team Curry. The old format was only highlighting how uneven things had become. Now compare that to other legendary playoff paths. Michael Jordan defeated 20 teams with 50 or more wins in the postseason. Kobe Bryant defeated 26, the most ever. LeBron has played more total seasons in the NBA than the number of 50-win teams he has beaten in the playoffs. That is a wild stat when you really sit with it.
There was no part of me that believed we were losing. And it was one of those things that I just believed to the core of me, but it was because I felt like the only way we could win was to dig the hole we dug. That group needed it to be like that.
That's wild, isn't it?
For whatever reason, they were so spoiled by success and needed it to be so damn difficult. They put themselves in a position that only they could overcome. But that was the greatness of that group. They lived for make it messy.
Kobe is the only player to beat 4 50-win teams in a single championship run. LeBron has never done that. Part of the reason is simple. During most of his 8-year final stretch, the Eastern Conference rarely even had 4 50-win teams to begin with. Some years it had 2, maybe 3 if things lined up right. When you put all of that together, it forces people to ask a tougher question. Was it dominance, or was it dominance in a conference that simply was not built to push back? Meanwhile, out west, you needed 50 wins just to breathe. In some seasons, the 8th seed in the Western Conference had a record that would have landed them near the top of the East. That is how wide the gap felt. The road through the West was a grind every single round, while the East often looked like a runway. Griffin's comments line up with what critics have argued for years. LeBron went to Miami when the Eastern Conference was already thin at the top. When that era started to fade, he returned to Cleveland, where the conference was still wide open. The strategy was simple: control the East, conserve energy, then deal with the real war in June. And statistically, it played out that way. His numbers in the Eastern Conference playoffs were often stronger than his numbers in the finals. Why would that be? Because for 3 rounds, he was facing teams that were good but not terrifying. Then in the finals, he ran into battle-tested Western Conference champions who had just survived a brutal path. Look at some of the matchups. Derrick Rose coming back from major knee injuries. The Indiana Pacers built around Paul George but lacking that final punch. The Toronto Raptors who struggled to translate regular season success into deep playoff dominance. The Boston Celtics in transition, with an aging core before their rebuild fully matured. These were solid teams, but they were not dynasties waiting to happen. Griffin even once mentioned Toronto beating them in a game and pointed to the energy of the city and the crowd. Not some unstoppable roster, not a powerhouse lineup. That alone tells you how the competition was viewed internally. The second best team in the East often became a running joke. The expectation was not whether LeBron would advance, but how quickly it would happen. That context reshapes the 8 straight finals narrative. Yes, 8 in a row is rare, but the record in those finals was 3 wins and 5 losses. When the competition leveled up, the results shifted. Compare that to Michael Jordan's 6 championships without a finals loss, or Kobe Bryant navigating stacked Western brackets multiple times on his way to 5 titles. Different paths, different environments, different outcomes. Griffin also shared something personal about his time working with LeBron. He said the pressure to win immediately was overwhelming. He felt pushed to move future assets and make aggressive short-term decisions just to keep the window open. Even after winning a championship, he was exhausted by the process. That says a lot about the environment behind the scenes.
What Ty Lue did at halftime to challenge LeBron, there's going to be a 30 for 30 on that moment and what it really did to LeBron. He was the best of his angels that second half in a way that he couldn't have been without Ty Lue. And Ty knew it. And to have the gift he had at that moment for handling that situation. And then for our locker room to deal with Ty Lue going at him the way they did and to redirect LeBron to get the benefit out of it, that's a James Jones thing. That's a Channing Frye thing. That's an RJ thing. That's a J.R. Smith thing. That's a, look, man, is he right?
Let's compare this to other great playoff runs. Michael Jordan beat 20 teams with 50 or more wins during his playoff career.
There is also the long-standing narrative pattern. When the team wins, the spotlight shines brightest on LeBron. When they lose, the blame often shifts to teammates or coaching. Griffin hinted at that imbalance. Other executives and former players have suggested that managing expectations around LeBron can be intense. The image that once felt flawless now has visible cracks. Then there is the stat-chasing debate. Critics argue that LeBron stays in comfortable games to reach milestones while framing it as managing his body. Others point to selective rest against tougher opponents. Supporters call it smart longevity. Detractors call it legacy management. Either way, the conversation is not going away. When you stack Griffin's admissions, the conference strength, the finals record, and the behind-the-scenes pressure together, it forces a serious reassessment. Was it dominance over an era or dominance over a weaker side of the bracket? That question is getting louder, and now it is coming from voices who were actually in the room. That is not random. That is calculated legacy management. When David Griffin called the Eastern Conference an invitational, it did not just describe those Cleveland years. It exposed a bigger pattern in how LeBron has moved throughout his career. Every major decision lined up with opportunity. Every move positioned him where the road looked smoother. He went to the Miami Heat and teamed up with Dwyane Wade and Chris Bosh at a time when the East was already thin at the top. When that era started cooling off, he returned to Cleveland while the conference was still wide open. Then he joined the Los Angeles Lakers and quickly pushed for a trade that brought Anthony Davis. From a strategy standpoint, that is smart. Stack the deck, control the variables, increase your odds. But if you are building your case as the greatest ever, people are going to examine how difficult the path really was. Now compare that to Kobe Bryant. Kobe stayed in the Western Conference his entire career. He went through playoff brackets loaded with 50-win teams almost every single year. He defeated 4 50-win teams in one championship run, something LeBron has never done. And he did not constantly shift conferences to find breathing room. The level of competition he faced round after round was brutal. LeBron supporters point to the 8 straight finals as proof of unmatched consistency. But Griffin's words add context. That consistency was built in a conference that even insiders describe as historically weak. Being the best in a weaker environment still counts, but it hits differently when you look at what was happening on the other side of the league. Then you bring in the finals record. 3 wins, 5 losses during that 8-year stretch. Those 5 losses came against Western Conference teams that had just survived a far tougher road. When the competition reached its highest level, the results shifted. That becomes part of the evaluation, whether fans like it or not. Griffin also made it clear they did not treat the regular season with urgency because they believed no one in the East could seriously threaten them. That detail alone changes how those years are remembered. If the grind was lighter for 3 rounds and the real battle only started in June, the narrative of overcoming impossible odds feels different. None of this erases accomplishments, but it reframes them. When someone who was inside the front office confirms the conference was weak and the path was predictable, the conversation evolves. The image of constant uphill battles gives way to a more calculated picture. And once that perspective is out there, it is hard to ignore.